going on, guys? It's Seth back with another Defense Wins Fantasy. Missed last week on a little bit of unexpected travel for work, so I apologize for that. But we're 6 weeks through the season, man. We are a third of the way done with the NFL regular season. So I thought let's take a look back at some of the predictions that we were looking at the beginning of the year. I'm going to specifically start with the NFC. We're going to do the NFC tonight, probably go to the AFC next week and try to dive in a little bit deeper on some of these players and what we kind of expect for the regular season. So if you didn't take the advice at the beginning of the season, should we be still taking that advice, or should we sell high, buy low, do something of the nature with the current players? So let's go ahead and dive right into it. The NFC North is where we're going to start. Now, my breakout player at the beginning of the year was Packers linebacker Rashawn Gary. Needless to say, this was a pretty good one. He's got 6 sacks in 6 games. Now, his tackles does leave something to be desired. If he's defensive line eligible in your league, then you're not worried about it. Outside of that, it could make you a little bit nervous as far as his consistency. But as we are talking about consistency, he has had a sack or more in 5 games. He's rising to the top as expected. Currently on pace for 17 sacks this season. Obviously, that's going to cool off some, but he has been hot start, solid fantasy player, and like I said, with a guy that's getting the sacks off the edge as a linebacker can make you nervous, but his consistency has been solid. He's basically just spreading those sacks out every game, so you're not getting that bust week. You're just getting all solid weeks. So Rashawn Gary is who we thought he was. Next up, Bears rookie Jaquan Brisker, safety. Now he's averaging just under 6 tackles a game. He's also had 2 sacks and a fumble recovery so far in his rookie campaign. He always just seems to be at the right place at the right time, just like in college. He's not afraid to come up and make the hit. Once again, as a safety that's averaging just under 6 tackles, that's pretty solid. I mean, that's really good floor level for a safety, especially as a rookie. He's currently a top 24 safety in leagues, which places him as a starter in most of your defensive 2D back league scoring systems. So if he's still out there, which I doubt it because he's been that good and he's young, so if it's a dynasty league, he's, I'm sure, on somebody's team. But he's been very, very good for your team at this point in time. So another one who is who we thought he was. Next one, Lions. Tracy Walker, safety. Hey, man, this guy came out of the gate hot. 9 tackles and a sack in week 1. Unfortunately, he tore his Achilles in week 3, and that ended his season. You can't predict injuries, but that's a tough one to see. It looked like the thought process that was followed was there, that he was going to continue down the road of success. However, it's you hate to see it, so hopefully he has a speedy recovery. But Tracy Walker out for the year with an Achilles after really starting pretty strong. The final team in the NFC North is the Minnesota Vikings. And that person, my breakout player, was Danielle Hunter. Coming back from injury. So far, he's had 3 sacks on the season. But to take that as a defensive end to go along with 27 tackles, which is pretty solid. I mean, that puts him on pace for, 70-some tackles? No, 80, into the 80 tackles. And he's starting to heat up as, he had a sack and 6 tackles in the last 2 games each. He's getting the consistency there. He looks like he's getting more back into the game shape. He's not as worried about that pec muscle. And that D-line they've been double-teaming the crap out of him, and it's shown on the other side. Zadarius Smith has been looking good. DJ Wanham has been looking good until he got hurt. And then the Jones, the guy that came in for Wanham last week, got 2 sacks because they're trying to keep Hunter off the QB. But he still has 3 sacks, and he's been very consistent. So consistent with the tackle numbers that he's still ranked extremely high for D end. Some in the top 15, some in the top 5, depending on if you have tackle bonuses for your D linemen. So that is another one that is who we thought he was. Granted, we knew he was. It was just whether or not he was going to come back from the injury. And so far, so good for Danielle Hunter. Moving on to the NFC South with the Falcons. Yeah, took a little bit of a risk with this one with a rookie, Troy Anderson, 3rd round pick. Week 1, 0% snap. Week 2, 13% snap. And he kind of bounced around that 13 going forward pretty much. But this last week, he got his first start due to the injury to Mikael Walker. So what did he do with that, Seth? Oh, a ho-hum 7 tackle solo, 6 assisted tackle game. Went from 13% snap share to 100%. I said at the beginning of the year that he would be a slow burn kind of prospect, that at the end of the year, you might be really happy to have him on your team. But then the Falcons traded Deion Jones to the Browns. So this is another step that paves the way for more playing time for Anderson. If he's not on your team yet, and this is a guy that might still be on the waiver wire because of the low snap percentages that I've said, he should be now, especially if Walker's not playing again this week. He still has a little bit of fight that he's going to have to go to get up the depth chart, but he's shown that when he gets the snaps, he's productive. And assisted tackles is always a little bit of a finicky sack. So when you see a team that is very, very happy to give out assisted tackles, you want pieces of that defense. So moving on to another linebacker in the same division, the Saints' Pete Werner. Now, I said that this guy had the opportunity to be great in the offseason. I told you that you should go pick him up. And all he's done so far is leading the league in solo tackles. What did I say? What did I say? You could be very happy with your linebacking core right now. Very happy. Now, he hasn't had many big plays. But the way you look at a guy like Pete is that he's the tank leading your team into battle. Or hell, call him a magic dragon for all I care. Let him lead your team with that base level amount of points. It's going to be consistent, it's going to be stalwart, and it's going to be great. It's not like he's a low-end point scorer. No, his tackle level has been so good that he's finishing in the top 10 weekly of linebackers just because of that consistency. So, if you have him, congratulations. If you don't have him, the owner at this point knows what they have, and so he's going to be a little bit more expensive than the $1 that you could have picked him up on during the preseason. Bucks are the next team. Antoine Winfield is the name of the guy, and this dude is ballin'. 3 sacks, 1 pick, and 37 tackles in 6 games. He's on pace for over 100 tackles. He's on pace for, 9 sacks. Okay, we'll see. Not really, but but he's getting after the ball. He's making the big plays. He's got the consistency and high floor of the tackles. And he's close to half of his total tackles from last year, and it's only been 6 games. The signs were there for the breakout, and it looks like we nailed this one. Moving on to the final team of the NFC South, and that is the Panthers. Now, that's been a whole thing. I mean, if you want to talk about the best player for a defense right now, it's probably Baker Mayfield. but you don't get the points that way. So we'll go ahead and say Brian Burns. That's the guy that I said at the beginning of the season was going to have his breakout year. Now here's the thing. He's got 4 sacks and 24 tackles. He's currently sitting in the top 10 of defensive ends on the season. Now, he has been more inconsistent than you like. He has 2 bust games and 4 boom games. He's also a player to watch because of the coaching change. They fired Matt Rule, and we need to understand how that might impact the defense. He didn't have a good game this week. That was one of his bust games. So if you feel nervous about this last week, you can trade him. You're going to get high value for him. I wouldn't trade him. I think he's a valuable asset to have on your team, and I think that he'll only benefit in winning game scripts, which hopefully the Panthers can somehow find out how to do that at some point in time. But I wouldn't fault you if you want to sell high on Brian Burns. You're probably never going to be able to sell him at the peak, but he's sitting in the top 10 right now. He's younger. He's talented. You could probably get a nice little package for Brian Burns at this point in time. So let's go ahead and move on to the NFC West and start with the Seahawks. My pick at the beginning of the season, Boye Mafe. Another guy that I said was going to be a slow burn guy that I expected in a later in the season push that he would become relevant, that we would see early on how often he's being used on the defense and know if he's somebody that's capable to be a starter on your team or at least a bench player that you can throw in there on bye weeks at this point. Once again, IDP, Dynasty League, he's a guy that I have very, very high interest in, or I did at the beginning of the season. So what has he done? Well, he has 1 sack on the season. Not phenomenal in 6 games. But when you look at total points scored in comparison with other rookies, he's 3rd ranked behind Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson. Now, he leads those 2 other guys in tackles, which makes sense because he plays that outside linebacker, D-end kind of role. Trayvon kind of plays that too, but a little bit less consistent as Boye Mafe does. Once again, he has had consistency, but the point scoring consistency isn't to what I would call a starter level at this point in time. But the signs are there for future production. He's getting on the field. They believe in him. The Seahawks are better than we expected them to be. And I expect him to just get better as the season goes on. And if it's a dynasty league, I look forward to having this person on your team the next few years. 49ers. My breakout player was Dre Greenlaw, another one coming back from injury. Now, Dre's been a consistent player this year. He's only had 1 game under 6 tackles on the season. Solid. Not Pete Werner solid, but solid. He has been missing the big plays that boosted him up the ranks last year and in years past. Fair, but he has had a nice floor. Honestly, the whole 49ers linebacker crew got off to a slow start this season. But Greenlaw looks promising to finish as a top 15 linebacker. And with a 6-week sample size compared to some of these other guys, some blow-up weeks for players are keeping them ahead of Greenlaw at linebacker standings that I expect them to kind of come back down to earth with lower week in and week out totals. Less boom bust out of Greenlaw. You're going to get that consistency. And some of those boom guys that have had 1 or 2 big weeks so far this year will come back down out of the clouds. And you'll be looking at a guy that, once again, was a great person as far as just that moving the points forward every week with your linebacker. Next team in the NFC West is the Rams. My breakout player was Greg Gaines. Now this one, honestly, nothing special from Greg. I thought that with more playing time, he would come out of his shell and get a little bit more sack heavy, a few more tackles, but he doesn't have any sacks to his credit this year, and he's got minimum tackles as well. Safe to say this one on my part was a swing and a miss, which that's a shame. I've been batting pretty good as we've been talking, but that one is one that I just did not hit. And, it is a D tackle, so it's something that in some leagues might not even really matter. But Greg Gaines was a guy that just has not panned out. Final team of the NFC West is the Arizona Cardinals. My breakout player for them is Zaven Collins. Now, he's hovering around LB 25 currently in the standings. And Zaven has been getting the snaps, and as of late has started to seem like he's putting it all together. Just last week, he's coming off a 2-sack, 8-tackle game. So I expect to see him continue his rise. As a true heart of the Arizona defense, he needs to take that ownership. And his consistency has been much better than, obviously, like last year, he wasn't even a player that you could have on your team in redrafts and a player that you never played in Dynasty. That has changed. He is a week in, week out starter, as I said, hovering around a LB2 at this point in time. But he's going to get even more consistent in my eyes. I think his tackle numbers are going to continue to go up. Isaiah Simmons hasn't really been helping him out too much. He's started to play a little bit more better, but Collins is the guy that just needs to take the reins and take care of business. And we'll see if that continues tonight against the Saints. Moving on to the final division, which is the NFC East. Start with the Cowboys. My Cowboys breakout player, Neville Gallimore, D tackle. Gallimore, though, much like Gaines, has been just a guy at D tackle this year for the Cowboys. And this is a team that, has been getting a lot of pressure on the QB. Sadly, it's not come from Gallimore much. He's got 1 sack in 6 games, go along with 11 tackles. Now, I say all that to still say that he is on pace to have his best season as a pro. He's in his 3rd year. Best season in sacks, career sack year. But if your career best sack season is 1.5 sacks, it's not that great to talk about. I still expect him to possibly be playable. Like, he's going to have games where he's good this year. But even in a D-tackle league, he's not consistent enough to even know when that's going to happen. It's going to be games where they decide to put more pressure and more blocking on the D-ends, or if the D-ends just force the quarterback to try to run up the middle and he trips over Gallimore. He's not a guy that I would feel confident starting, so I'm not going to tell you guys to either. So I think this is another swing and a miss, but he is only in his 3rd year. If you drop him, I understand. Probably would too, but I'd probably keep him on a player to watch list just to see if it starts to turn the other way. Moving on to the Eagles, the undefeated Eagles, my breakout player was Josh Sweat. Now, Sweat's pace is pretty much exactly where it was with his stats last year. He's on pace for 7.5 sacks this year. He finished with 7.5 sacks last year. He's on pace for 50 tackles. He finished with 42 tackles last year. So pretty close to where he was last year. And that Eagles defense has been really stout this year. They've gotten pressure from a lot of different areas. But it's also not stayed strong all game long. They come out and they throw up a lot of points and they do a lot of good on defense very early in the game, and then it kind of fades down a little bit. If they can get what seems like their stamina a little bit better as the season goes on, then I expect a guy like Josh Sweat to get more late game pressures, get more late game sacks. Now, I think he'll still have blow-up games from time to time, and he will finish as a defensive end 2 on the season. I was hoping for more, but it'll still be an improvement from last year. So it's kind of You could say it's a push as far as where he's at, but I would expect that if you're a Josh Sweat owner, you might not be, you'll be surprised where he finishes compared to how he made you feel week in and week out, in my opinion. Down to the final two teams, the Commanders are the next one I'm going to talk about, and that player was Cameron Curl. Now, Curl's been solid. Not spectacular, but solid. He has kind of went the way of the Commanders. They've been meh. But he did finally get a sack this last week, and he to go along with 5 solo tackles in that game. I still feel good about Curl long term, so don't jump ship just yet. He seems to be a guy that's in the right place, right time, and he is a guy that's willing to make the tackles. Just he needs to have either the higher baseline of tackles or get a few more big plays, even if they're just more pass offenses. But I'm not giving up on him yet. It's a long season, and he hasn't killed your team. He's been, probably D-back 25 to 35 about every week this year. Final player on the list is the Giants' Azeez Ojulari. Now, he got hurt in week 2 in that game, which he had a sack and a forced fumble. So we've yet to see him on the field with Kayvon Thibodeau, which is something that I've been very hopeful to see, especially for how well the Giants have been playing. Daboll's got that team really humming, and he is an offensive mind, but that defense that Buffalo had a really good mix of their DNs giving pressure. So I wanted to see if he's really brought much of that with him. So far, they've been a solid defense, maybe not the biggest big play defense out there, but it's one of those things that you just kind of want to see these two guys on each side and see how the O-line really tries to block both of them. But he is back at practice this week and has a chance to play, so kind of a wait and see for this one. In 2 games, one of them he has a sack, so that's a plus, but we'll just have to see how it all pans out. So that's kind of where we're at. Next week we'll go into the AFC and kind of talk about those guys a little bit. Also, we'll continue to push some of the free agent information and any big hitting news. We're getting close to the trade deadline in the actual NFL, and we'll see if anything happens with that might impact the future of your team. But as always, make sure that if you're wanting some offensive news, hit up the Fat Boys Dynasty podcast. Comes out on Tuesdays. And I'm pretty excited about their meal situation. They talk about their games, each one of them being a meal. Makes me hungry on my way to work, but that's beside the point. I'm curious to see what the Dolphins have to do to get back into their meal situation. Hopefully, it's this week. But with that being said, we'll see you next week. And remember that defense wins fantasy.